You there?
I'm here.
Perfect. So, let's start at the beginning. What is your ties or connections to Bridgeport, Connecticut? And what's your early story as you make your way through the city?
Well, what happened, I was a police officer in Stamford, Connecticut, and I was on a squad there that was one of the premier squads. We handled narcotics and we handled organized crime, and it was really a top-notch squad, and everybody wanted to be on it. So I got on that, and we started to work, and we were realizing that we weren't making the big bust, okay? I mean, even though we're sitting in big cars and everything, hiding different with vans, and we got all the stuff, and we weren't come time to do the house on a Friday night. We tell our boss, lieutenant or sergeant, say, hey, look, they're heavy for the weekend. You know, now's the time to get them. All right, fine. What time you want to go and do it? Fine. Go get the judge to sign the papers and blah, blah, blah. Never knowing that my boss was the king. My lieutenant was the kingpin of all of this stuff. So it was a combination, Don, of places. All right. What I mean by that, it was, you know, both in Stamford, there was stuff in Norwalk and stuff in Bridgeport. See, what these guys like to do is they try to find out, like, which places don't have, back then, don't have tie-ins with these cities. Okay, where they used to say all the time, hey, let me know when the state's in town. Now, I'm not going to let you know when the state's in town. Man, get off those drugs. And that was the main thing they were concerned about all the time. Let me know when the state's in town. So I worked it, so I knew that wherever it was heavy, and then we would be able to pop them. But still, whether it was Bridgeport or Stamford, every time it came to when we served a warrant, they were opening the door, come on in, folks, that type of a thing. Until the day came by when we arrested a low-level drug pusher by the name of Bill Chapman, who worked for my lieutenant and my sergeant. He was the man that actually went to New York and brought him back to my sergeant's apartment. And he cut up the drugs with everybody and everything. So he basically said to us, which turned everything around, Bridgeport and Stamford, he says he had some big cases coming up. He said, look, if I give you something really big, will you talk to the prosecutor for me? I said, Arville, it better be something big. So we pulled over into a company called Pitney Bowes. We wound up being there from midnight to 8 in the morning as he described all the drug activities that were going on. And from there, we went on, and that's what we did. Bridgeport was really more of the drugs, okay? Stamford at that time, totally corrupt. I wrote the book about it there. But they were doing more of the gambling and everything of that nature back then. They were taking care of everybody, and it was tough. It was tough. So that was my tie-in to Bridgeport, figuring out who had the apartment in Bridgeport as well as the home in Stamford. So it was a lot of back and forth things we were doing until my boss, my lieutenant, found out that we were working on something. And he demanded to know what we were working on. And we didn't tell him. So it would take long for us to get bounced back to uniform. So I continued to work it on my own. I worked 2 shifts. I worked a shift in uniform and a shift on my own, working against this and piling this stuff together.
Wow, that's fascinating. And for people, I think, might be surprised if they don't understand the criminal landscape, but talk to me about the landscape of organized crime in Connecticut and how much existed of it, who the big players were when you were running around. Paint the picture of that for me.
Oh, sure. That's very easy. Like this says here in the book that I wrote, when organized crime controls the police department, they control the entire city. That was Henry Hill that wrote that. So that's pretty easy to do. Man, once you control that, once you have the cops that will work it for you and do all this stuff, and here's what would go on in Bridgeport and Stanford. So you need to realize Fortune 500 companies were in 3 major cities back then: New York, Chicago, and Stanford/Bridgeport, Connecticut. Okay, when I say that to people, they go, "What? Fortune 5?" Yeah, they had all the companies moving in. General Re, all these companies are coming in to the Connecticut area, and so what would happen would be the guy, the contractor, would really want to get the contract. He would want on these places. So the organized crime people would say to him, "All right, look, I'll call you the day before the bidding ends. Tell me the lowest score, and I'll come in $1 million or $500,000 under it." And that's what happened, whether it was Bridgeport or Stanford. They'd come in, and it was a monopoly like that. And little by little, it grew. Chief of police didn't do anything about it. The mayor didn't do anything about it. So when you have free reign like that, when you don't have to worry about anybody, you have free reign. Okay? And the people involved, there was a whole bunch of people. As we got into the 80s, there was Tony McGow. Some people, American people, call him McGalley. We call him McGow. And a lot of people, we had total people that was doing stuff around. And, there was John DePoli, they called him Stoogie. He was a made man out of Stanford and Bridgeport. He would give you your jobs. Okay, what I mean by that, if you were up for the sergeant post, okay, if you were up to get be promoted to sergeant, and there'd be 3 candidates, 1, 2, and 3. And even though your guy, the honest, good guy, was number 1 on that, if he wanted to put in number 3, because that was his buddies and pals, he'd skip over those 2 and get number 3 and put the sergeant badge on him. And who can complain? The rank and file knew what was going on. They would say to me, "Vito, I know you're back in uniform. We know why you're back in uniform, because you disrupted the apple cart. But man, look at that. Look what happened. They jumped over 1 and 2. They jumped over the guys with all the decorations or all the great arrests, and they pulled in that guy there who was a cousin of one of the builders." You see? So that's what happened. These people, there's so many people back then that was involved in these type of things. Even in what's his name's book here, Lenny, he talks about those people too. They're all through here. You had Carmine Galante. You had all these different people that had so much pull. And a guy like Billy Chase comes in and disrupts the whole apple cart. And that was bad for them, man. That's bad business. Same thing with me. The guy, Anthony Dolan, who was a cub reporter back then for the Stanford and the Norwalk papers and everything of that nature, somebody gave him information about just one thing in town, like somebody that take care of the properties for the city and everything like that. He did that. He found out it was corrupt. The guy didn't have a college education, which was on the list of things needed. Horticulture degree, he didn't have that. He barely had a high school degree. So that he made that a front page article. He went on then to write 75 articles in the newspaper, mostly about the stuff I was going through, as well as many other people, the arsons, the this and that, and the whole bit. He went on to win a Pulitzer. Imagine that. He went on to win a Pulitzer for his writing, which was amazing. And Ronald Reagan, see, this all mushroom. Fine, it was a little town type of a thing. But what happened is he did these articles, wins the Pulitzer. He gets a phone call from Ronald Reagan, who happens to be running for president. And I guess that was 1980. He wants to meet with him because he read an article in Rolling Stone magazine about Anthony Dolan. He goes, he becomes the chief speechwriter, and little by little, this thing had built up. And, tell you the truth, it's back again. It's back again. Amazing. People have short memories. It's a very corrupt area again, and be it Norwalk or Stanford, I'm not working it. That's for sure. I'm not hired, and I don't know, if I would even want to get involved again, which I can't even say that. I would not want to get involved again. I had death threats. I had 5 little kids at that time, front page paper as far as death threats and all of that stuff. So, a lot of things. I've been very blessed in my life to go through everything. Working narcotics, I was in a shootout. Me and my partner with 2 other guys. One guy lay dead, one went wounded. There was about almost 30 shots shot us. I walked away from that without a bullet hole. I worked undercover organized crime in those cities, and, against the biggest people. But see, here's the key, if I could just say this. The reason my case is different was because usually when somebody goes undercover, they get a new name, they get all the stuff, the licenses, everything else, go to some place, at least a couple hours away, and they work it there. I didn't. Okay, what happened with mine, the new chief came in, start clearing house. Okay, and he called me in the office. He says, "You want to go undercover?" I said, "Undercover? What undercover? Where?" He said, "No, right here in Stanford." I said, "Stanford? Oh, well, Bridgeport." I said, "How am I going to do that?" And he said, "No, you go undercover as a disgruntled ex-cop that was not allowed to arrest these top people." And he went on. So that's how I went out, as a disgruntled ex-cop. And what happened was I was able to go to all the clubhouses and everything else because they had more of a hatred to my bosses than they did for me. And they wanted to pump me for information about Larry Hogan and all things of that nature. And, it was amazing how it worked out. But it was a totally backwards type of thing to do, but it worked out, I'm sorry I'm rattling on, man. I'm sorry.
No, I love that. I love that because this is all the world that
yeah.
was that
you
was
pick
going
from
on.
it what you pick from it what
Sure,
you want.
yeah.
I'm just trying to give you an overview.
No. And how many of the 5 families were operating inside of Connecticut, or was it a specific family that sort of controlled and ran Connecticut?
Well, for me, I infiltrated both the Gambino and Genovese families. Sometimes these families may sound funny, but interlapped, okay? So my investigation was centered on those 2 families, okay? Some people from this family, some people from the other families. But, we also, during that time, we had the Colombo Lucchese family was there too. So I didn't have anything to do with them. I mean, you can't do them all. But see, all these people, Stanford is a gorgeous, gorgeous city with the headquarters of all these places, and yet the underling of organized crime was and still is partly still going on. Now there's corruption again in the city hall. Corruption here, corruption there. There's arson, there's everything else. Now people call me, "Vito, why don't you take a look at that?" I said, "What are you calling me? That's years ago. I'm not going out and doing this stuff again." I said, that's up to these people nowadays, the new regime, the new centurions, like I call them. It's up to them now to go out and take care of these people. And it's just incredible. When Anthony Dolan went to Reagan to get the job, what happened then is the thing that changed this all around was Reagan. Then it was the catalyst for Reagan's initiative against the American Mafia and the establishment of the President's Commission on Organized Crime. Back then, he went on all the major channels, 2, 3, 4, 5, 7, all the ones we had back then, and he put hundreds and hundreds of new prosecutors, hundreds and hundreds of new top guys, investigators, and that's how he kind of put a lid on this thing finally. And I was just a part of this, that's all. I mean, I'm not saying that was done just of me. There was me and a whole lot of other people, as well as Anthony Dolan, putting it out there. But it changed everything. It started the RICO laws. It started all those things going on. and it changed Stanford, I thought, for good, but it didn't work out that way. The next regime comes in, the mayor and everybody like that. My book comes out, and everything's still the same. Everything's still the same, and the same is in Bridgeport too. Trust me, they got a lock on Bridgeport. Locked on Bridgeport with all the corruption going on.
And you were aware of Billy Chase. You understand his story. In your own words, tell me what you think Billy Chase's story is, and then second to that, tell me, because I do look at it as a very tragic story. Tell me why it is so tragic.
Okay, why it's so tragic? Because here's a man. Okay, I'm going to compare it. I'm going to use side by side. Stanford had Duke Morris, a black guy, tough guy. Okay, when he got on the job, there was only 2 other black guys on the job who weren't street smart at all. Okay, what's his name? Billy Chase was street smart, of course. Duke Morris was street smart. So he gets on the job, okay, and what they did through all those decades, 60s, 70s, 80s, beginning of the 80s, they put him out. They say, all right, Duke, what you got to do tonight, go into this place here. Go into this, we got information at this liquor store and this other places down the road. Go in, you know, and then once you see them doing something, have guys in backup cars outside, make a motion, and they'll come in. Hey, that's my uncle's place, he would say. That's my cousin's place. Ron, we don't care. Go on. They forced him to do these things, okay? Billy Chase, when it was all over, and, Lenny knows what happened on that. I mean, I love that part. I mean, it's kind of like, well, you did all that stuff. That's great. But now, we got no place for you. What do you mean you got no place for me? I put my life on the line, man. But Billy Chase. Last time I saw Duke Morris, he was hopping a train to get out of town to go down south to run 2 drug empires. And he said to me, Vito, we've been at each other. I almost killed you that one day when you had your little daughter in the car. And he said, but you don't know what they did to me. You don't know what they did to me. I could have been a great cop, but it was always go after this one, that one. That's my aunt. That's this one. That's my whole bit. So they tortured this man, and then they threw up their hands when it was all done. By that time, he was a hardcore junkie. He ran the whole narcotics thing all through Fairfield County. Okay, he handled that. Billy Chase Billy Chase infiltrated an organized crime group of people, of which that I knew some, and they were going to make him a made man at this big place called the Italian Center in Stanford, a big place, one of the best places around, and some of the people were bringing Billy around to introduce him to the people, and they were saying. And the people were saying, are you nuts? The black man is not going to come in our organization. But that's how good Billy Chase was, that he could go into a place like that and get all these people. And then, even then what happened when everything started going and they're on the roads firing at each other and doing this and doing that. And that's when everything hit the fan. But a lot of people went away. They went away for a good 5-6 years, several of them. And, it was incredible. And then what did they do after that? He calls a friend. He calls the Bridgeport Police Department. And a friend picks up the phone. And he said, hey, where are you? I'm across the street from you. Across the street from you? Why aren't you? Come over to my place. Nah, don't you think, man? I'm saying this, not in the exact words, but I'm saying this. He said, what do you mean? You can't come over and see me now? That's it? He said, well, it's better that, I don't get messed up in this whole thing as well as you. That's what Billy Chase does. And then the day came when I heard about his death and how his death came around. I was shocked, man. I just put my head down because I sat at poker tables, squashed in where I had no way to get out of the poker table at all unless 3 people on each side of me moved. I sat there and, one guy all the time would look at me. And he would look at me and he'd say, I don't trust this guy. I don't trust this guy. And all the other places. Oh, knock it off, man. He ain't a cop anymore. He's okay. He's okay. And meanwhile, I had one of the old wires back then. But Billy Chase did what he had to do town to town with the gangs, with the Italian people, you know, with the boys, the Italian guys. And then he was left to dry, man, left to dry. And from working it, I hate that stuff because I work this stuff and I know how hard it is. When my assignment was over, only 2 people were supposed to know what I was doing. The new chief of police and my lieutenant, who I loved, who I was in the shootout with back then. We were shoulder to shoulder. And I would go get my paychecks middle of the night. He gave me a gun for my ankle. And when it was done, I'm in the chief's office, and he said, oh, by the way, this other lieutenant was involved. He knew you too. And I don't like this guy. I said, you put another guy and you told him everything I'm doing. Why did you need a third guy? You see, because they just don't care. They just don't care afterwards. And I'm sorry to rattle on, but this is very dear to my heart, near and dear to my heart, for seeing this with these people.
Oh no, it's incredible. And so you are saying, back to an earlier point, I just want to be clear that at that time, organized crime had infiltrated the police departments, no doubt.
Oh, no doubt at all. No doubt at all. Bridgeport too, big time. Bridgeport too, big time. Lenny knows that era. Lenny, who was that old guy, that police, what was he, a commissioner or something, or what the heck was he? Got in trouble, bounced a couple cops and everything like that. He was corrupt, right? Oh, I don't know if he's not there. Okay. But this goes on all the places. Totally corrupt. It started way back in the 50s and 60s. Okay. But the cities were small. They didn't get the big buildings back then. Okay. Things changed, and a lot of money poured into Bridgeport. A lot of money poured into Stanford. Tons of money with a lot of people that wanted their share. And that brought people to the front. Organized crime always wants their money. They want their money up front, man. They want it. Otherwise, people are going to die. Everything of that nature.
You know what I find fascinating, right? And I want your perspective on this. So crack cocaine hits the inner cities of America around 85, 86. And sort of changes the dynamics of every American city in many ways, and also changes policing in America. When you look at that time, the time that Billy Chase was doing, these investigations, was the mafia involved large scale into the drug business? Because as you know, there was always this, we try and stay away from drugs, wink, wink, nod. Were they heavily involved in that? And what made Billy, what ability did Billy have to be able to navigate literally, and this is pre-internet or pre-cell phones, right, pretty sort of small communities in a way. Like Bridgeport, although it's a big city, if you grew up in Bridgeport, you kind of know people there.
Yeah, that's right. That's a joke, Don, because I got on the narcotics squad in 72 of all times. Once it got to the late 70s into the 80s, all through that era, we had heroin. Heroin was big, and nobody was there saying give them any peace. They let the people die. Heroin was big, man, massive stuff. We raided a house of 2 brothers, Smith brothers, and as we were arresting them, we were going through the drawers, and we found maps. We found architects' plans for castles down south they were going to build for their mother and all of their family and everything like that. Big heroin dealers. So to say, and everybody had their hand in that, okay? Organized crime had their hand. None of this stuff you see on The Godfather where they say, no, we don't go into that. That's bad business. We don't go into that. Baloney. I worked it. I saw it. It didn't mean anything to people. They didn't care who died. We'd go to, on a frozen night, 0 degrees. Me and my partner go to some place about somebody laying on the ground. We'd go, and the needle's still stuck in the frozen arm of a dead guy sitting out in the lawn, laying out in the lawn. And found out it was an organized crime family person. And but you know, it's a lot of things, I wore a lot of hats back then. And believe me, I'm not saying this to brag, because so did a lot of other people that did what I did and even more than what I did. Billy Chase was amazing man what he did. And you know, he just showed by the gang stuff and everything what he was capable of, what he could do. Okay, Duke Morris, the same thing. He knew the streets like the back of his hand. People were afraid of him. We'd arrest white and black kids, and they would say, you know, well, no, please don't let Duke Morris find out. Duke Morris would shoot people in their legs and their kneecaps and everything like that if they weren't working for him. Everybody was working for Duke Morris back then. A sergeant on the police department. Imagine, he was that, and he was crooked as the day is long.
Unbelievable. And so, was it hard at that time to be an honest cop?
No, not really, because the honest cops, I tell you, they were inflated, I'll tell you that much. From the time I got on, when you get on the police department back there every day as a rookie, you ride with a different person. So you can supposedly take the good from that person and learn, and if the cops doesn't teach you anything or blah, 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 you just put it aside. Everybody back then would say to me, they were downtrodden. They say, Vito, it's terrible here, man. It's terrible. It's so crooked. Everybody's on the take. But we just go. But they went to work and they did their job in spite of that. Oh, that's what I was impressed with them. If something big was going on, they gather at that spot, and from all sides they would grab the people, whether it was bank robberies or whatever it may be. They stood there to walk, but they knew how corrupt it was, and they would say to me, especially after we got bounced back, they'd say to me, Vito, don't let it bother you, man. We know what's going on. Just, you know, take it easy and just, you know, do what you got to do. And I did. My father was a special cop. He wore the uniform. I used to see that hung up in the garage as a kid. And, you know, I was telling the worst thing for me, if I can just share this for you, Don, the worst thing for me was when I was working undercover, and obviously I'm supposed to be with the mob. Of course, I'd go eat with them. I'd do everything else with them. And my father cut a lot of hair. He was a barber of one of the cops. So one day I stopped by just to see him, and I could tell he was acting different towards me. I go, what's the matter? He says, oh, so now you're a crime people now, huh? You're with all these guys, all the bad guys, huh? You're with the mafia, huh? No, Dad, don't worry about it. I cried in the car when I was there. I said I wanted to, you know, because he was such a police lover and everything else, and was so proud of me for that. And I cried in the car. I wanted to go back into that barbershop and say, no, Dad, it's not that way. Listen to me. But I couldn't. Like they would tell my mother would tell this, I'll be dead. I would have been dead. You'd be calling this number down, nobody would answer it. But anyway, that I couldn't wait to when the thing ended down the road, and was able to see that I was doing it undercover. That was the worst thing for me ever.
Wow, it's fascinating.
Well,
and I still struggle with Billy and how many cases he built, how many convictions he did. What if you were to talk to the guys that were of the upper management of that time, if I could ask them a question, why did you leave them out there like that? Why was there not support there? What do you think would be the real answer?
Well, you know, back then too, you had a lot of people that were racist back then. Okay, you really did. That's a long time ago. Okay, I remember when I got divorced several years ago. Me and my partner that worked together for a long, long time. He was a black guy. We lived together in our apartment, and I would go to work, and many cops would say, "How many bedrooms and bathrooms you got there?" Like, how many bedrooms? We got 2, and we each got a bathroom. Oh yeah, okay, because you know, those people, they got that fuzzy little hair stuff in the bathroom. Isn't that all over the place? I just walked away from them. So you have a lot of that stuff, and Billy Chase did too. If I was testifying at court like I did in the Skakel case, I would just look and say, nobody cared after it was all done. Nobody cared. Okay? Would they have cared much for a white guy? Maybe a little bit more. Maybe a little bit more. But they didn't care about Billy Chase. Okay? So what happens? He finally flips out. The man flips out and gets involved in all the things he did, and it was horrible, horrible way. So that's what a lot of people put on their mouth now when I hear people talk, yeah, that Billy Chase, man, he was, oh, yeah? Well, why don't you do a little history on the man and see what he did, what he accomplished, and mental things took place in his head. The devil raised his irony and put it on Billy, and Billy did all the stuff that he shouldn't have done, but he couldn't help it. Couldn't help it at the time. It just shows you, just again, like I said, in page 4 of Lenny's book, calling his best friend. His best friend said, no, it's better off, man, I don't come up there. You're not going to come and spend time with me to help me? No, it's not really good time now. That shows you right there. Same thing with everybody else. I mean, with me, oh, sure. You know, like I say a lot of times to people, the police departments back then, they'll pat you on the back or do stuff like that. I mean, when we had the shootout with all the people dead and everything, me and my partner, and came into headquarters. Nope, just a couple of good job, guys. Take Saturday and Sunday off, and blah blah blah. And then as the years went by, I had to go to a counselor. I asked my pastor at my church at the time who he recommended, and he sent me to somebody in Fairfield because I had the nightmares. I kept walking around the house all night long and all that stuff. And thank God that by the grace of Jesus and the help of my counselor, it ended. Okay, and everything was fine. But they didn't do nothing. Nobody sat and talked with me. Go to this guy. They had none of that stuff back then. You know? My life was in a whirlwind, getting divorced. Everything was horrible. Fooling around, doing all this kind of crazy stuff while they're pinning medals on me. They're pinning the Combat Cross on me for unbelievable work, they say. And yet my life was in the pits. What good was that? Okay? I could have very definitely flipped out. Citation for value, oh, thank you very much. Give me help. You know? So, I mean, there's a lot of things going on. I'm sorry I'm going off on all these things, Don. But, this reeks a lot of stuff from me
Sure.
about Billy and what, my people. That 15 people got indicted finally at the end of the day. And one senator who was going to run for governor was all set to run for governor, and that was it.
And can you tell people, because I think the perception, and you point out something that people aren't aware of. I think there is a perception that in some respects, what people quote unquote would call the mafia or Italian organized crime has gone away, right? Which it really hasn't. It's there. I would make a case it's actually smarter and stronger than it ever has been because of the sophistication of it now.
Oh,
but
sure.
Can you describe at that time in the 80s how dangerous Italian organized crime was?
Oh, well, you had guys like I said, you had Tony McGalley, you had from people like that. Back then, what they would do, other guys too, not just him, they with the computers then and everything else, they would say no more taking bets or anything with pencil and pad. No more. You got top computer guy over here. You just do it with him. He'll do it. All he has to do is hit one button if they come in, and everything's gone. So the funny part is big case. About 12 people got popped. Okay, I did a little bit. I wasn't even on the job anymore. I just did a little bit and told the captain a couple of things. But they did the stuff. But what happened is here to come and raid this place. All right, the guy hits the button. everything goes off. But he got, if it wasn't so crazy, it's laughable. But the guy kept the backup of all his notes on the table, right in front of him, okay? And that was a joke when we went to court. I said to the guy, his name was Dean. He was running a lot of things back then and different things. And I said, man, you put him in charge of that? Vito, who am I going to get? Who am I going to get? Tell me. So, yeah, that made a big difference. That made a big difference. Then they tried to, of course, the biggest thing, Don, was when you're sentenced and you're told if you're seen with anybody else from organized crime and any kind of connection at all, you're going back in. So there was one guy from Stanford, he had to go to New York, see the bosses. He laid down on the back floor of the car in the garage, covered with blankets a whole bit. But they had an informant, and he went right back into jail. So they have a lot of things now to do it, but it's still the thuggery. It's still the come out, break your arms type of a thing, you see? But they're trying to do the sophisticated things, but guess what? So is law. The law gets better things than what they get. So they got to stay one step ahead of them. Everything that's new this year as far as, computers and all kinds of different things to monitor people is changed. When my partner would go to New York for the conventions every year to see the new products in the security world, it would change from one year to the other, all more sophisticated than the previous year. And that's the stuff they use. They have the millions to do this on it. But let me tell you this. I had a chance for several days to work with Henry Hill, okay? Henry Hill, to speak with him at places. Henry, I got to know him. He got rid of the devil of drugs, but he couldn't shake the alcohol, okay? So I did stuff with him, and I just learned from him. He would go to Quantico to help the FBI learn tricks and different things about what was going on, so things of that nature. But he knew. He would tell people, man, this is you're going to go to jail or you're going to die. I know you've heard that a lot of times, but that's what happens. Very few people get away with anything on this stuff. And so that's what happened with him. He wound up dying from the alcohol. He just couldn't contain that. So,
when you hear or it's brought up the name Billy Chase or parts of his story, where does your brain go to first when you hear the name Billy Chase? What does he define for you about that particular era of time?
In that time, and before he flipped out at the end, a hero that should have been maybe pensioned off at that time and everything else. Give him his pension, which he probably got for a time, I would imagine, but give him treating the way he did all the Stanford, he did all the Bridgeport, man. He blended in. To go into a organized crime setting with all of those guys and walk away where they got their arm around you is amazing work. Nobody can do that stuff. I did nice stuff, but he did great stuff. Okay, let's get that all set. One of the premier undercover agents I've ever seen, and everything. Even though I never had the opportunity to meet him or enjoy him back in the days when he was a hero. But thank God that Lenny brought it to light. And he did a great job on it, and just got to know, wow, this man did this, he did that, and the whole bit. That's what I would say. Hey, Vito, man, did you ever hear about that guy, Billy Chase? Oh, yeah. What do you think of him, man? He flipped out, huh? Oh, man, that was horrible. Yeah, he was a hero. A hero? Heroes don't do those things, Vito. Yes, they do, until they get pressurized and they got nothing else to do in their life, and they don't know what they're doing. He was great. He was great, absolutely great. And, that's what I would say. That would be my first words. Look at his record. Look at his record. Look what he did. Look who he put away to make your life a little safer. And you know, another thing, I learned a lot walking and talking with Henry Hill, because, you know, the public nowadays loves gangsters, okay? They love the mafia, okay? I watched Henry with lines. I would speak with a bunch of people, different people, the good guys and then the bad guys, and Henry's line would go out the door. Oh, Henry Hill, I can't imagine. But see, what the people don't realize is these are the same people that go in your father or your uncle store and jack them up if they're not paying them thousands of dollars, which means they can put food on the table, and they kill people, and they honor these people. Oh, man, you are so great. There's no honor to thieves, no honor to these thieves and what they do. So I don't respect any of their actions all the way. Look at Gotti. Oh, fireworks and everything. Everybody wants to be close to him, to touch him. And meanwhile, he says, go kill that guy. Go kill this family. Go take more money from them. So who wants to be around us? But they are fascinated. I've talked so many dozens of times to see people fascinated by organized crime. I was speaking one time. Henry Hill was talking. It's a big theater setting in Vegas, and a guy was walking by the outside, and he said, coward, stoogey, this and that, all the stuff. You rotten guy. So I jumped on the mic, and I said, ladies and gentlemen, let me tell you something. I got a question to ask all you people here tonight. Henry didn't know what I was doing. I said, let me ask you one question. Who in here, okay, you're saying he's this, he's that, the whole bit. Who in here, when you're sitting with the feds, and the feds are saying to you, you're going 18 years away, at least 18 years away, unless you help us. Who would say, that's right, I'm going. Raise your freaking hand. Please, let me see a hand up in here to say, no, I'll serve my time. Nobody raised their hands. I said, see what I mean? You would do the same thing that this guy did. And it's true. But, people admire this stuff. They can't wait now for the new Godfather things coming up or whatever. I don't know, Soprano type things. I don't know. I can't even follow them anymore. So. And
would you say that as a whole that we've learned anything as it relates to sort of policing and criminal justice? Have we learned our lesson from the past as of yet here in America in 2021?
Yeah, we have, but and like nowadays with everything going on, 98% of the police officers I admire all across the country, but there's that bad 2%, okay, that's out there, all right. So what I do a lot of times, not a lot of times, but a few times, I've taught on ethics, okay, and what I said on that, I'd say during my time, I said there was one guy, of course there was Larry Hogan, the crook who went into the little diner, luncheonette, to pick up some more money from this guy Ernie, who he went to high school with. They played on the offensive line together. They were buddies. They were football stars, buddies. One went one way, the other one went another way. Okay? Near the end of the conversation, Larry says to Ernie, you've been doing great with those card games, man. You're making about $800, $900 a week. Well, Larry, what am I going to do? They're both laughing. He says, I want more money. And Ernie thinks he's kidding. He says, get out of here. What are you talking? No, I want more money. I want $500 more a week. You son of a bee, and blah, 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 all that kind of stuff. And, he shut down the games. Forget the stuff on the computers and everything. What Larry Hogan did, he had the card. Ernie had the game 3 days a week. He sent uniformed guys. He was a lieutenant. He called 2 uniformed guys right in that area and said, do me a favor. Go over to that diner over there, the clubhouse behind it. Tell them the wives are calling. They're making a lot of noise. So the neighbors are calling. They're making a lot of noise. So the guys would go there, okay, and all the people inside are nervous, okay. 3 days later, when he has the next game, tells 2 other guys, let's go over there. Man, we got wives calling over here. They want to know where their husbands are. Sends them in again. After the 3rd time, are you still there, Don?
Yes, sir.
Oh, okay, I'm sorry. After the 3rd time, the people, all the card players and everything in there said, "That's it, Ernie, man, I got to go, man. I'm not going to get picked up this 3 times. Goodbye." Shut down his whole card game. Now you look at that. That wasn't with real fancy stuff. That guy did it just by sending people over to break up the game. So you got to go back, and there's all kinds of ways. That's back in the 70s for that one, into the 80s.
Incredible. Well, Vito, listen, this was an incredible interview. I'd say one of the best I've done as it relates to this subject matter and your stories and perspective. What I will ask of you is, as I start to edit the episode that you're going to be in, I have further questions. Can I call you back?
Oh, definitely, Don. Any time. That's near and dear to my heart when I can talk about organized crime. Believe me.
All right. And what's the name of your book?
My name of my book is Rogue Town, R-O-G-U-E Town.
You know what's funny is I feel I might have spoken to you years and years and years ago when you were trying to get that turned into a movie. Is that possible?
Yeah, now that I'm thinking of it, wait a minute. As soon as the book went out, see, in other words, I knew it was going to be a good book to read, okay? Never thinking it was going to go crazy, all right? So I was happy with it, and all of a sudden it went crazy. Not whatchamacallit, I forgot the newspaper. No, on the top 10 sellers list or something like that. But I sold hundreds and hundreds of books constantly, and I was happy for it at that time. So I got a call. Let me see if this connects with you. From 2 guys. Okay, they were working for somebody that had that movie out with I forgot the guy's name. He was a lawyer, but he did all his lawyering from a limousine. With a guy
the Lincoln
driving
lawyer, yeah, that was me.
That was you?
Yes, I did Infiltrator.
Was that the name of that?
Well, my partner directed Lincoln Lawyer, and then we went on and I produced and he directed The Infiltrator with Bryan Cranston and John Leguizamo.
You know, I just sat back. It's still selling. I've been happy with that. But truthfully, in the back of my mind, people have said to me, and they said, Vito, why is it selling so good? I said, all right, you got a lady goes in a Barnes & Noble or whatever, and she wants to read good criminal stuff, true crime, okay, with some maybe organized crime in it, that's good. She picks up a Rogue Town, and she sees on the top, forward by Pulitzer Prize winner Anthony Dolan. Oh, wow. This guy won all the awards for the stories that are in here. Okay, they see what happened in Stanford, blah, blah, blah. Ronald Reagan's initiative against the Mafia, and blah, blah, blah. Then they see when organized crime controls the police department, they control the entire city. Vito Collucci's the real deal, Henry Hill. And they go, wow, I got to buy this book. And that's what they've done. They've told me that. I go, why did you pick my book? And they would say that. How could I not? Look at the cover. So, I've been letting it ride because, I've been doing good with my work and everything like that. But my dream is still to get it because there's still too much stuff in there. Too much stuff in there. I didn't even touch 20% with you. But that's my dream down the road, and see what happens with it.
Oh, I'm going to be in touch, and I appreciate the interview. Let's stay in touch, and I'll get, if I need follow-up questions, I'll give you a call, sir. Thank you so much.
Oh, thank you very much. Anything I could do. So you're a Norwalk boy, right? I heard?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Norwalk High, right?
Yes, sir.
I was Rippewan.
Okay.
Oh, wait, I like that, yeah. Okay. Okay, as long as you beat McMahon back in those years, that's all I care about.
That's right.
So,
yeah.
Call me, Don. Call me anytime, man. You're a good man.
All right.
Thank you very much.
All right.